self-assessment, which is based on this rubric, fill this out. And then we would have a planning meeting between the board and the superintendent to talk about that self-assessment. I put in here that that's when we would collect the anonymous evaluation forms from the cabinet at that point, again, to help inform the superintendent's goals that they propose. We are on step 2, I'm sorry, I jumped. We're on step 2, so we're talking about a planning meeting. So the idea is, this wouldn't have to be a very long meeting, but it's an idea, say that there's something that's come up and changed that, in terms of specifically what kind of information, you'll see when we get to it, step 3 is really long for the superintendent to do, because this is the idea where the superintendent, and this is how WASDA frames it, it's the superintendent's responsibility to gather all the evidence and artifacts that referenced the self-assessment for the rubric, right? So that takes a couple months. And if there's anything specific that the board wants to request for that, it's good for the superintendent to know that before the work is done. So it's not a long meeting, but it's kind of the idea that it kind of kicks off that gathering of materials.
We have our August retreat anyway.
Right.
You do it at ours.
Right.
Actually, I can see that being a fairly substantial conversation.
Right. Well, yeah, talking about the new goal, maybe, going over the new goals that are proposed. They're not solidified in that meeting, but it's true, it could be a longer conversation.
I think the longer conversation perhaps is around what are the artifacts and evidence that people want to see.
Right.
Being clear around that. So, collect a whole lot of stuff that aren't hitting the mark of what people want to look at or consider.
So what I understood at at Auburn's maybe it was, at the WASDA conference, is that the collection of evidence was based on the board goals, right? And that the superintendent collected what they felt met those goals, that it wasn't really the board directing what, is that correct?
Yeah, for sure, but a perfect example is the idea to get community input. So it's better for us to plan that ahead of time, so we can work on getting that done before, so
yeah,
it's not.
but you're saying collection of, I heard you say collection of evidence, that we help direct the collection of evidence. That would be true for what you're just saying, but I'm talking about what I understood them to say in Auburn is that you, Larry, gather your things that you see that meet the goals.
Right.
And
I've been doing that all
we set the goals.
Yeah.
Right. But if
But
there
we
is
collaboratively set the goals.
Right.
But if there's something else that comes up, it's better to know that before.
Correct.
Right, that's all. And that's why I was thinking, ideally, maybe, after a couple of years, this gets kind of routine and we know kind of what evidence is helpful.
Correct,
Perhaps the first year,
it
takes more time to go through.
It's particularly bad when we try to test.
Yes, it's going to be interesting to try to figure out how to do that, right?
Well, that'll be next year.
Yeah, it will be. So maybe the August retreat will have a good.
But maybe that's a good thing for you, is to decide as you're doing it and talking with the cabinet about how can we connect some of these dots even though they're apples and oranges.
Yeah, I don't know that you can when they're apples and oranges. I mean, I don't know that
But there might be common themes
crosswalks.
or common something that we can drag out that, I mean, we're
Well,
not gonna have a year of, we don't have any data, we don't know what to do.
It's like using the IRR information.
We'll
Yes,
we'll have data, we just won't necessarily be able to equate the data to the previous year from the perspective of growth, because they'll be looking at different standards. But we'll have data for sure. And some of the things won't change, it's a lot of our performance measures around AP, IB coursework, advanced math, advanced science. I mean, all that stuff is not going to be impacted by the changes in the state
We'll
assessment.
just have to find alternate measures.
Yeah, so not
Methods, alternate methods.
In fact, I was just thinking I should attach the board goals to the end of the document because it's pretty relevant. So I didn't do that. Okay. So then the idea is after we have that planning meeting, and I'm gonna, depending on what you guys think, maybe we'll have, collecting the cabinet information at that step, because again, it's kind of closer to the school year, if we're gonna ask for their feedback on the performance for that school year.
I personally like.
Closer to step.
In step 2, have it happen by, at the end of June for us to review during that planning meeting in August.
I thought that's what that said.
That's what, yeah, but we had talked about, or do we want,
I thought you were using that in the June assessment.
well, and that's why I wanted help thinking about it, because do you want it to be, because the self-assessment is, let's use this school year, so 2014, 2015. June, by the end of June 2015, the superintendent does a self-evaluation on performance for the previous school year, okay? And one of those things is one of the steps that we would like to happen is for the cabinet to perform an evaluation of the 14-15 school year as well. So do you have it
They
in
do
a
it
similar
twice.
time period so that when the superintendent looks at the self-assessment and says, okay, going forward, this is what I think I should work on, these are the skills I need to bump up, these are the goals I see. You can
Okay.
use that cabinet information as a
So they're
So
evaluating
I-
the same time period.
My assumption was that the self-assessment was included with the cabinet assessment and the community assessment to facilitate the board assessment. Are you saying that that's, we do an assessment without his input and then he gets input in June? Is that what you're meaning?
So,
I need a
well,
definition.
and that's again, the cycle thing that gets so confusing. So at the end of the 15 school year, it will be a self-assessment based on goals that were set for that school year and then performance of that school year based on information that was gathered. Like, for example, the reason why there's a delay in our assessment is because information from the state, we don't get right now until what, November, December for the MSP data for 14, 15, right?
Can I make
quite
a
delay.
visual, just for my own?
Well, yeah, for
On
sure,
the board?
yes.
My-
Because this is what I was trying to do
But
here,
it could just be
so.
my own visual.
No, that's cool,
So what
so,
I did.
Yeah, I did that, I did actually do that.
Did you do
But
the
it's
E's
not-
and C's and
I want
D's?
to start with June,
okay, so start with,
Maybe that will help me.
so June, put like June 2015 maybe.
you know, start, yeah, like
Okay,
let's see
because
a
I think
real
that helps to
year.
have a point in time.
So
So the self-assessment, let's put the superintendent and the cabinet assessment together for now.
Yeah, so
Okay.
super,
And the cabinet assessment is done by the end of June for the 14-15 school year.
so that's for the previous school year.
Okay.
2014, 2015
So
school
would
year.
that be the board evaluation of the superintendent?
Not
Is that what
yet,
you
not
mean
yet,
by
not yet.
superintendent?
So
So he
this-
does his own
Yes.
self, that's what I should put,
Okay,
self.
Right.
And Amy, you're differentiating the proposed timeline from this year's timeline because it
And
won't
this,
be
and
quite the
again,
same
and
this year.
this is again a proposal based on Renton's document. If we want to have it quicker in terms of, because what we have right now is we evaluate the current school year in the review cycle, where they're talking about separating it quite a bit in time. Mostly, I think because of like that MSP delay, maybe they had survey data, but it's a shift. That's why I tried to make the timeline. It's a shift from what we do.
so may it be more appropriate or helpful for the board if my self-assessment of current year's performance and the cabinet's assessment of current year performance came to the board concurrent with the board then beginning your own evaluation process
In
for
May.
that year?
So that's April, early April.
So yeah, so I'm thinking maybe all of that gets to the board by March 31st.
Will
So
we
then
have all the
as-
test results in the new cycle at that point?
Well, no, I mean, it's not all gonna be perfect. I mean, some of it's gonna be a little
Right.
off cycle, but most of it, I mean, if you think to all of the goals and performance measures as a school district, we've had presentation on most of those already this year.
That's true, we
I mean,
have.
So we capture most of them by this point in time. But I'm just thinking, it seems to me that's
Yeah.
sort of
That's the
critical
dissonance.
input
Yeah.
that the board
So we
would want to be
change this
considering as you're completing your own evaluation.
So that maybe
So it
April
would seem like maybe that's March 31st or whatever.
Consolidation
What
of
date?
performance materials.
March
that are
31st.
Considered performance materials
And
in
then-
evaluation.
Right.
And at
You
the
know,
same time, the board's evals, we're doing
So
this.
then during the month of April, you as board members review
Right.
review all the data that's been collected throughout the year, review the self-assessments, do your own ratings individually. And then during May, that all gets consolidated into the final evaluation, and then there's the final evaluation meeting by May 31st. And then by June 30th, I would be proposing goals for the coming year. By August
Wait,
30th.
Okay,
May.
so,
Much better.
Right.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you're not-
you're flipping it.
So by
That's
May-
one question,
Yeah.
when we do the board self-assessment, do we not want to see these things before we do our own
Yes,
self-assessment?
well
That's
then,
what he
I mean,
said.
your
Get
board
those first,
self-assessment
and then do
is
the board
a different, but
self-assessment.
I think all of this would be helpful information for your board self-assessment too, which
Right.
you would do in May.
When is the cycle for the community feedback? What?
I think it's
April.
January, May, and it's like September, October, somewhere. I think those are the three.
Yeah.
These
makes a
would
lot
at least
more
have
sense.
September
One,
and
January.
January.
Right, right.
1, 2, and then what are we doing in
By
May?
March 31st.
So-
Board
Yeah.
self-assessment is May.
And then I think,
Oh,
And,
not here,
Right.
not April,
Right.
I see, okay,
Right.
and in May,
Under
May.
March too.
okay.
So
May
May would
May,
be,
board,
board, so that you do the consolidated evaluation gets
That's what I was
completed,
gonna
the board president takes that on.
Right.
And then there's
Consol-
that,
consolidated evaluation of this.
yes,
So that-
consolidate, so individual board members are doing their own review and ratings in April. In May, that all gets consolidated into a final evaluation. And then there's the evaluation meeting that occurs in May as well.
Evaluation meeting.
Right.
Right.
yeah.
And then by the end of June,
What did I miss? I missed something in March, the community survey?
Community, yeah. So you
yeah.
receive.
Well, that's just a date,
Like, yeah.
You're right.
But that's
Right, right.
That might not be there.
somewhere
When
in
it
the
gets
homework.
captured though. by
No,
the
no,
announcement.
she just
It's
does
a
it.
data, it's a
Okay,
data
okay.
point.
Okay, so
And then by the end of June, I'm proposing
Yeah.
goals for the coming year.
Both district goals and professional development goals.
Correct.
So, and that's superintendent's proposed, because the board sets
Correct,
goals too, so
superintendent,
that's
right.
two separate things.
Right. And then, separate and apart from this, you need to talk about your own goal setting
Right,
process. But then by the end of
proposed
August.
goals.
right.
I'm not gonna
Is
do
that superintendent goals, or will you be?
I would be proposing my own,
Okay,
or
board,
my own personal goals as well as district goals.
district goals, that's what I was wondering,
Right.
are district goals included?
Right.
Okay.
And then by the end, and then somewhere.
Anything else
I mean,
in June? The
Oh,
board
contract
does?
finalized.
Yeah, that's,
But it syncs up nicely.
yeah, it does. And then by the end of August, then there's another, then that's fine, we finalize those by the end of August.
So we're finalizing the goals by the end of August?
Yeah, and hopefully by that point, the board would have done
Sorry, I
their
ran
own,
out of.
that's all right, finalized goals.
Final.
And hopefully by that point in time, the board would have done your own
goals.
self-assessment, you would have done your own goal setting. Those should all get merged
When do we
together.
do our goal setting?
Well,
Here?
Yeah, and I'm not trying not to confuse this with your board's process, just to keep, I think that's a,
Well, and I think, yeah, we have a little bit more.
But just like an
flexibility inside
idea.
of it.
You could even do it in May, just so,
yeah.
but
It's
Yeah,
traditionally
right now
been
we have
May.
it.
really
Right now
is.
we have
Okay,
it in May.
okay.
Right, yeah.
That helps, does that help a little bit
I
to
think-
see it
I
though?
think it helps in, well, I just think
It
it helps
helps
in
me.
May because then you're not
Yeah.
graduating and schools are in.
It just seems
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
and I agree with Dawn, it just seems like my own self-assessment and the cabinet self-assessment would be most helpful to the board before you, as information.
I agree too. I
As
think
part
that's a
of the
good change.
information.
So Amy, I
Yeah.
loved your
Yeah, so we
reading
can-
it, but then it helped to, I mean, you
No,
did
yeah,
you
no,
did a
that's
really good
fine.
job.
No, that's fine, that's fine. No, I think this makes a lot more sense.
It just helped to clarify.
That's cool.
So then
I'm gonna write that.
so this to me looks very, it's really not that much different, I think, than what we have now, but I think it's much more specific, which I think is good. So then, the other piece then would be the contract pieces.
Right.
So the June 30th obviously is, I think that stays because that's, yeah, 'cause
That's
there.
nicely.
that's the end of the contract year. The March 31st, I mean, I think that's, in my mind, that's a fine date for me to submit, you know, here's what I'm gonna be proposed, here's what I'm looking for in both my contract renewal as well as terms and conditions for next
Should I
year.
put that up there? You make your solution.
Yeah, so it's this one, this step 2 here,
Right.
under the contract.
So I can put,
Under March.
So
So he submits his
contract request.
contract term request, yeah.
Right. So then I think that,
that is the
That's the
cabinet.
superintendent,
That's,
self-assessment.
no, reviewed it, those are the board,
oh, we review this data
Board
and that, we
self-assessment.
do our self-assessments.
That's the board self-assessment?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one in May is we consolidate it, Janet consolidates it.
no, that's individual assessments.
Mhm.
Individual self-assessments.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
April is we individually fill this out
Correct.
for Larry, for the
So
superintendent's
it's not
performance.
self,
It's not self,
superintendent
it's
So
assessment.
it's-
superintendent,
Okay.
Individual,
Individual
By
assessment.
individual board
Yeah.
members.
Right.
Okay.
Glad you.
Based on
all the
the
data,
performance materials.
all the data in the
Right.
soup and cabinet self-assessment.
Because it's good to have that by itself, I think it's gonna take a lot of our time.
Right. So,
So you're submitting here the contract
so
What'd you
contract requests,
request.
right. So March 31st, June 30th is decision on those. So then the only other date then is we're back to the date
I know I don't
of
have it
sort of
numbered.
what's
Do you
the,
want
No, this, I took
What's
some
that?
notes and I think I'll take a picture.
what's that mutual
I don't have it numbered
contract?
like you did.
It's fine.
What's the date at which the board wants me to state my intentions for the coming year?
That-
And what's
yes,
the
it-
date at which the
so
board
we only
wants
have-
to state their intentions to me? Right now it's February.
Right now it's February. So do we want to discuss it? Do we want to,
So I'm gonna pull a
do we want to vote?
It's 5:15.
Mm-hmm.
What else were you hoping to accomplish?
Well, so since we are almost at March 31st, the only other thing to accomplish is if we can start this for this year. So,
No, I actually don't want
I'm not sure you can get community if you don't do a special
No.
We might have
call
to
to
out.
get ahead of.
Part of
I mean, you
it.
could.
I
Well, we
just
can,
want
we
to-
can certainly
yeah.
look at
Okay,
the
we look
surveys
at
that
it,
have been
yeah.
done this year. They
And
won't have,
see if there's
they won't,
anything in it.
yeah, they won't have the specific questions or maybe the granularity of the questions that are desired moving forward, but they certainly have some survey
Something.
data about, right,
Right.
community sentiment,
Right.
leadership, you know,
That's in there, right?
yeah, it's broader, you
Yeah.
know, than perhaps.
And then we just get it in for the next year.
And
Yeah.
it isn't really, like you say, it could be, when, you know, as a parent, what about leadership at the principal? So,
Yeah, so we might need to, moving forward,
I think
tweak those
so.
questions a little bit to get a little more specific,
Yeah.
to clarify what level of leadership we're specifically asking about. So, well, I'll say from my standpoint, I can do I'm ready to do, I've already gone through this and kind of marked up myself for the year, sort of a self-assessment. Cabinet, it's March 24th. I'm sure I could ask them to do it. I would not like to ask them to do it by March 31st.
when do we,
For this
when
next
would we
year.
have opportunity to meet as a board to review the data? Why don't you make it right before that?
Yeah, or I could give them until spring break or something like that. I mean, you know.
Can we do the extended cabinet so we get those principles? I like getting down to the building level because it gives us a different.
I'm okay with that.
That's fine.
Yeah.
And then they're all anonymous and then
Yeah, and
They
they get
go
sent to
straight-
Cindy,
Goes in,
which then goes directly to
Janet.
President, yeah.
right.
So I'm gonna cycle back to my timeline here, just so I have a roadmap of what we are going to accomplish in the next 45 minutes. So do we need to, and am I hearing sort of a general consensus that this is okay for how we're gonna evaluate Larry this year?
This is the WASDA
It's
evaluation.
exactly the same.
I've said all along, I was in favor of using
Awesome.
the WASDA
So
evaluation
we don't really need to have a big conversation about
document.
the document.
I just had a couple, I had a couple not
Okay, so
major questions.
Hold that up.
Okay, I will.
Because I'm trying to get the sense of what we need to accomplish.
But they're minor. They're
So
minor.
we just a couple of minor tweaks, and then maybe if we have time, the timeline.
Well, and I think, you know, adjusting the,
Yes.
I can totally retype the timeline to match that. It's super easy.
Okay.
That won't take very long. And I think we can still move forward on this timeline and
Okay.
just have the process document match it.
So that's what I'm hearing is the two things we have left. Is that right? Does that
Yeah,
match what
yeah.
your vision was?
And so do we want to talk about the rubric and then we'll circle back and talk about the commitment, the contract commitment date? Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Did you just had a couple?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I was looking through to make sure I didn't have any more questions on this, but I think we answered most of them.
Okay.
Yeah, we actually did. So I like this, by the way, and I thank you for all the work that you've done.
I know, I haven't
Oh,
seen
well,
anything about what.
It's,
Yeah.
it reminded me of just knowing what our, everyone our strengths. This is definitely a strength of yours, so
I agree.
and, I don't know if it's a strength of mine, but it's definitely a strength of yours. Okay. So I put vision and mission, I added that again here, so I obviously was linking it both ways, just to FYI. And, hold on. Sorry. No, see, I made it funny. A question. A question I had was, particularly, the thing that I didn't necessarily like about this, and I don't know if somehow, I don't want to make changes, but again, I wasn't we're talking about things being a growth model, so maybe I'm not seeing it correctly. So it has your unsatisfactory, I don't like that term, but it has your unsatisfactory. I'd rather frankly see that be growth area or something. I hate the word unsatisfactory, you know?
The rent one initially had a different term.
They did.
They did.
They did.
I did, and I actually.
The
like
reason
that
I don't
better.
like it is if we're using a growth model, and that's where I was struggling with this connection between professional development, all about professional development, but yet, like I
I think it
said,
was emerging, yeah.
yeah, my new evaluations at work that are kind of, they've used all these, kind of like us, they've used all these different evaluations. What I love about it is that it identifies areas I need to work on, and then, like Larry, you were saying, I can go to all these professional development resources. At the same time, I've got to learn how to apply it, right? But I can go to all these things and learn about, oh my gosh, I didn't know that this is what I could be doing better. Like it was engaging my core class in better class discussions was one of my things. But yet I don't really know how to do that, right? Because I'm used to lecturing. So
This language, I think they took for the TPAP, right?
I think so.
So I don't see any reason, I'm happy with emerging too.
if everyone agrees, because I didn't hear.
I liked growth model.
Yeah, I do too.
I mean, it focuses on growth, not even emerging, it's just focusing on growth.
But growth, that doesn't really define what that is.
Maybe area for
I mean,
growth?
it doesn't fit with the stuff that's written underneath there.
Area
so-
for growth.
Area for
Area.
growth?
Yeah,
Yeah, that makes more sense.
area growth.
Yeah.
Because I don't want this to be, and that's how we all feel, when I'm evaluated, I get this angst, right, every single time before I get my evaluation. Because we get evaluated by our students, like I told you, it goes to our provost, and so there's always this angst, right? So I've had this group of students that just was pissed off at me.
You're looking for the red.
I was trying to remember what the terms were. There was emerging and something and something.
Let me
and
see if I can
something.
find it in here.
Yeah, I got it.
I may not have it.
What I'm really liking is the language change, and it puts me less on the defensive.
That's part of it, but it's not.
And it makes me want to embrace, and it got me so excited that I wanted to learn how to improve these two. And then it gives you, by the way, it gives you all your green areas, Larry, so it actually color codes it for you, so it's all my green areas are my strengths, and it helps me not to focus on that, where before I might have focused on that, and I didn't really need to. And then it gives me caution area, So it's not like it was necessarily bad or good, but here's some things that can help you get to the green area, and then you have your red.
So
So
here,
I see this as kind of that.
I found the Renton, what they used, and they gave a little definition for it actually. So
Okay.
developing is the first one, and that shows superintendent demonstrated adequate growth toward achieving standard during the period of performance, but did not demonstrate competence on the standards of performance, so that's developing. And then proficient is basic competence on the standards. Accomplished is exceeded basic competence, and distinguished has consistently and significantly exceeded basic competence. So it's developing, proficient, accomplished, and distinguished.
Can't we just keep it the same way and just switch out unsatisfactory?
For developing, or do we want area of growth?
Area growth.
Either one is fine. I think
Okay.
what I like about it is that it matches the message we're sending in terms of students, right?
Yeah.
It's the
Right.
same.
And our community,
Right.
that we all have areas of growth.
Okay, yeah, so let's do area of growth.
That was very different, because here's unsatisfactory, basic, proficient, distinguished. The other was developing, proficient was the basic.
Right.
Accomplished was the next category.
It's more
And
confusing.
distinguished is the
But I think Amy's issue, or
Right.
Kimberly's issue is the term, the connotations of unsatisfactory.
That's the only one that is,
Yeah.
yeah.
The rest of it is fine, but it's that connotation that we're trying to move away from as an education system.
Right.
So it doesn't match that.
And
we
this is
should-
supposed to be a positive process for all of us.
Right.
And if there's areas of growth, I don't want to be afraid to check that box and have to go, oh my gosh, I'm saying that he needs to grow an area, and then say it's unsatisfactory. That feels different to me too. I want to be able to say, no, this really needs to be an area of growth. And then we feel free to do that versus, no, you're unsatisfactory.
I think that sounds good.
Because you're not going to get all, you're going to have some areas there, and that's okay, right? I mean, Larry, what do you think?
But then along that same theme, basic is not really
Read the Renton terms again.
Renton terms again are,
developing,
Please.
proficient.
yeah, developing for the first level, proficient is the second level, accomplished is the third level, and the fourth stays the same as distinguished. So developing, proficient, and accomplished. And I think, you know, if you grab, like here, let's look at 1E.
Can we look at the employee's face on that one?
Well,
He's screwing up his face. Okay, before we go any further, what would you like it to say there?
well,
I like.
I mean, I actually, I really appreciate your comments, and I'm pretty sympathetic to them. I guess what I'm struggle with a little bit is basic becoming proficient. I'm not sure that as I look through this grid, that I would necessarily say that all of those descriptors
Match.
fall into proficient. So, I mean,
And the rent, because this was a
Basic.
total different description in
Yeah.
the rubric, so.
Basic to me is just saying, hey, you're doing this, like, treats all, follows board policy, okay? You're doing this and I'm not saying I'm either here nor there, I'm just saying as an example. Maybe I shouldn't for the camera.
what if
I don't want to
it
put something out there
what
that's
if-
not true.
what if it was developing satisfactory? I don't know, I mean, because satisfactory and basic are kind
satisfactory,
of,
yeah.
kind of in the
Yeah.
same realm. And then
Proficient or accomplished?
accomplished and
I
distinguished.
like that, but it's describing better. But I mean, it's just a better descriptor. But I really do like the picking the unsatisfactory out.
That's the only one I have the issue with.
Okay,
But
that's
it's your thing, and so I want to feel where we can all feel like we're really evaluating fairly, and it's not about hurt feelings. It's
Right.
about, let's do the
It's
job,
honest
and we should
feedback.
have this all over.
It's honest
Yeah.
feedback.
And that Larry's feeling comfortable, we're all feeling like, we're happy. I'm kidding. But that we're doing a good job and not feeling threatened by these terms.
So
I
let's-
don't know that satisfactory is an improvement over basic, I mean.
So let's look at the first level.
Just like I would rate the board across those levels.
Yeah. So do we want developing or area of growth for the first level?
What sounds better too when we're looking at a community? To me, I feel like area of growth.
I think developing is a more hopeful term.
Okay. It doesn't, I'm not married
I mean,
to it either way. I
It's,
don't care.
it seems to suggest one's on trajectory
Okay,
towards something.
Tom.
I really liked growth, but I don't care. They're very similar terms. I just thought growth sounded better than developing. But
I know it's weird because
that
I
could
think
be the
I
way-
think it sounds better than developing, like I think,
That could be just the way I hear it.
I want you to be comfortable there, but it's funny because in my mind, I think growth is way better than developing.
If developing sounds better to Larry, I think
I'm
that's
good either way.
important.
I don't
All
care.
right, let's keep it area of growth.
Let's keep it consistent with what we're saying in all of our other things.
Yes, no, and I think we keep talking about this,
Growth
it's supposed to be
model.
a growth model, so my vote is for area of growth. Do we
I see a
want to
positive
change
either way.
the other three headers, or are we okay with them?
Good.
Okay, all right, cool. So, what else you got, Kimberly? You always have good feedback.
Well, thank you. I didn't know that notice there was a, and again, I didn't realize this was the WASDA one, so it probably is neither here nor there on that. I didn't notice opportunity gap, I only saw achievement gap, and I think that those things are two different things, similar, they're linked, but
I think they're the same. I think we just-
well, opportunity is more equitability, and achievement is are you reaching your
I think that's why they changed it to
Yeah.
opportunity.
Oh, they did?
But the problem is we're using them interchangeably.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I thought they were two different things.
they used opportunity because the realization is that you can have an achievement gap, but you also have an opportunity gap. It gets a better definition of why you have a gap.
Okay.
So,
No big deal.
Okay.
Unless it's a big
I don't
deal.
know that I described that, I wasn't expecting.
No, actually, no, I thought that-
Defining moment.
No, but
I knew
you're
they
talking
weren't
about the
changing it.
background
Right. for the
causes of the
change.
gap.
Right,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's still, it's the gap. It's-
Right.
And it is an achievement gap, but I believe that just in general, everybody always feels like they need to change the titles on things every few years, but opportunity came about because it's an acknowledgement of perhaps why that gap
Right.
exists.
Yeah, and I think they felt that achievement was too negative of a
I
term.
think opportunity identifies a need for the system to change.
Right, that it's an opportunity.
Achievement
Right.
implies that it's the student's fault.
Yeah,
And I
same,
think
Right,
that's
that was part of the driving
problematic, yeah.
for the change in definition.
So we can keep that or change it. I always like opportunity better, but
I think right now the data we're getting more reflects the achievement.
correct.
I
you
don't think
are
we're
correct.
studying opportunity, which maybe is a conversation we need to have as a board.
Well, so I think then keeping the term achievement gap is appropriate because that is what we're tracking.
That's what we're tracking.
Okay. And then, that's it. The rest is not, this is a good thing. We don't need to.
But I think that's a great change to that first
It's
column.
not, it's smaller things, but I like changing that, the first one we talked about.
It's a great change, and I can make that edit. So, anything
Oh.
else folks want to talk about? Oh, no, you got one?
Yes, that was it. So
Okay.
linking back to what we
Yeah,
said,
yeah.
if we're gonna link everything back,
Mhm.
what I did not like about this is, again, I saw suggested professional development. I think we need to add suggested areas of growth.
Oh, I thought that was one and the same.
Well, that's where I'm getting confused on what
Right.
professional development means. Does it mean attending a class, or does it mean that, see, that's where I think the language
That's a good
is
point.
shifting back and forth. So when I'm asking that question,
Yeah.
that's why I addressed that first.
So
And
this is
Larry
the
told,
back of the
what I heard
town.
Larry say is it meant going to trainings and that, so that's why I went, this needs to be saying something that's reflecting,
Of the areas of growth.
yeah, we could still have that and areas of growth.
Well, I don't know that we need to do.
Double up.
Yeah.
The areas of
Could
growth
you just
is
say
an important part.
suggested professional development and/or growth goals?
Yeah, perfect.
Excellent.
I mean, I want to be specific, but I just,
No, that's, and it also,
professional
the
development was
cabinet,
confusing.
and we don't want the cabinet to be confused when
Yeah.
they're filling it out, so that's a good clarification.
They don't match.
All right.
Is this WASDA's too then? Or was
This
this ours?
is, no, this is ours. I just, because Renton had done something similar, and I just made it to match the WASDA
Okay.
one. WASDA didn't provide one of these. so I kind of made it up.
Okay, so then when you're saying here additional evidence artifacts used in completing evaluation, what do you mean by that? So
Well,
what's additional?
So that's, okay, so this comes back to the idea that, you know, there's a circle in terms of when you're completing the evaluation. I'm sorry, my brain's getting tired, but you're completing the evaluation, you know, ideally we have that meeting in August where we ask if there's any more evidence. Say that, because this is something that was recommended, say that one of us, and this is more, one of us or even a cabinet member, doesn't have access to a piece of evidence that everyone else perhaps should, and they want to cite a reason of
I see.
why they completed a grade the way they did. It
Okay.
is very,
Okay.
um,
Or if I'm looking at mine and I
Unspecific,
say, Larry, I need to see something more for this particular thing because for some reason it's not answering the question, and he could provide me something else if it's available.
right, yeah, it's
So
meant as,
maybe,
Okay.
maybe it
That's not what I
should say
heard.
instead
Oh.
additional evidence / artifacts that support the ratings or.
yes, I think,
whatever.
yeah,
So that it
that's
gives
what I
more
was,
information to the people that are doing the,
Okay.
the evaluation, so it
that, or
tells
that are
them
bringing,
what-
the
yeah.
idea is that these are all being individually completed, and we have to bring it together
Right.
to make a summary. So
So
if
I fill this
someone
out.
wants to cite another piece of evidence,
Right.
then this is a place where they can do that.
For ourselves.
Right, and then
I
to bring
see,
it, to
okay.
bring for discussion.
Okay.
Okay, yes.
So there should be,
So you help me word it.
there
no, I
probably
think
should be
you're-
instruction at the beginning to be completed by individual.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was his responsibility or
Oh,
mine,
you
so
know,
that's, yeah, that's all.
Yeah, it looks like it's,
I see what
this
you
is
mean,
our work, but really you're asking it to be completed by
the individual evaluation.
individual evaluators.
And so if it's me, I would complete that. If it's you,
Okay.
I just got baby.
Does that make this, that help?
Yes, I didn't know who was that, yes. So if I have some additional evidence I can bring as I'm filling. I felt like this is here.
And then the
I have
first
some-
one, additional evidence / artifacts used to support.
Or referenced, or used to support, used to,
But I would think that we as board members would put those things into that blank.
oh, that's the
Yes.
cabinet
Those would be
evaluation, yeah.
something, I think it would be good to list
The
as
community
individual.
data, the cabinet.
Yeah, good
So
idea.
additional
John.
used,
That, yeah.
how about referenced?
Yeah, if you
When
wanted to say
completing-
you reference
Yeah.
something.
Referenced when completing evaluation?
Referenced instead of used, is that what you mean? Or
Yeah,
re-adding?
does that make,
Yeah,
additional evidence / artifacts referenced when
Yeah.
completing evaluation if applicable?
yeah, if applicable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
One more thing. So are we gonna rate this 1, 2, 3, 4, and then average? So that's what I understood it to
so
say.
that's what it says, and I
And do
actually,
they rate it 1, 2, 3, 4?
3, 4.
yeah, so say you're looking at the first one here, A, 1.1.A, right? And say you give a proficient, that equals a 3, and so you would put 3 in here. And then we take,
Wait, say
All-
that again?
okay, so say,
In this.
Oh, so you're doing it on paper, we're not gonna use the, isn't it online?
So if you choose.
I know. it might be, is it online?
Well, you said this document was your grade.
So if
Yeah,
you chose
like, yeah.
proficient for the.
But we could
first
fill
one,
out the Word document.
Then that would be
Is that
a
what you
3.
mean?
Okay.
Because
I know
proficient
the
is a 3.
board
And that's what, that would go in the box.
You do it online, they shoot you
1.1.
off your results.
So you're hoping Rasta
A.
has this online?
It would make it easier
It
for
would
the
make it easier.
president.
Okay, yeah.
I've
So-
never
So it
seen
would go in 1.1.
I would
Okay,
love
so I
to.
go 3, I go 2, I go
I
1, I go
know,
4, I
training
go
this.
3, and then I put my
Exactly.
average,
Board
I
is still
average for
around,
myself
I think.
over in this
So-
box here.
I'm kind of wondering.
Yeah, but the only thing I've ever seen that they've had online is.
Nice,
the
then we can come in
board
with our
self-assessment.
averages.
You can.
With
that
every
that you
person
could do
having
online,
their,
because we
check
participated
all of
in
it.
that.
Okay.
So you
So
don't
that's
have
fine.
to, but you
I
can.
will
So
look
that's
at
why
it.
I think we
That's
should use
fine.
anything online that we can.
I will look and see if I can
find
find it.
That's
Okay.
certainly,
I mean, it would make it simpler, and it would be all, it would all just be,
It's
there you go.
That way.
And it would come out in the
So WASDA does
Probably a
average
thing
them,
similar to this.
WASDA does
and
average.
then they average them per board member, they average it per all of us.
So we would take
They're just.
This is where we got
everyone's
stuck
score.
last year,
I
so now we don't
know,
have
no,
to
it's
go
a good
through
thing
this
to talk
again.
about, it's a good thing to talk about. So right now, the board president would take everyone, 5 different scores in here and average them and put that in the summary document, and that's what would come to the meeting in May.
Everyone's average or one average for all 5?
One average for one
One
fund,
average
but we've
for all
not the cabinets.
But let me ask a question, are we averaging it
No,
across
no.
per one?
1.1A would have the average
Oh,
for the 5 of us.
Oh, good.
Now, Renton did
And
go
then you go
across,
across an average.
Renton did do that, and then they went down, which I thought was very
I like that.
confused. Well, but you could, I don't know if you would get as much information as if
As
you
you
averaged
can.
across.
Then you
So-
take these and then average.
Because the questions themselves are put
Well, it's
together.
like
like
you
that.
end up with
Take
one
these,
proficient,
this,
right?
this,
But
this, this,
if you're trying to look for areas of
Put
growth,
average in there, and
Um,
this.
Oh, I
average
get you,
down
I
here.
get you, I get
But
If
you.
you do
could
it
put-
across and down, does that
We
give
could do it
you more clarity?
And I
and
think,
we could do it
I think
across.
that's,
So, and that way, for this strand right here, then you get one summary. But all the information would be in the summary evaluation.
Well, it's interesting, because let's say I was looking at visionary leadership, the first strand one,
Right.
right? And let's say I'm looking at this, and I'm like, I'm looking at the superintendent from Yakima School District, okay?
Mhm.
And I'm saying, and I go, wow, they're proficient on commitment to the vision. They are distinguished and develop strategies. They're really good at developing strategies. That holds the board and the staff accountable. They're really doing these two things, but this one, they need some development because that's the piece that's missing. Wouldn't that be my growth? So what
Well,
I'm saying
that's-
is that I want to pull out that one growth area because what if it's over here the whole time?
and then the average is gonna be less meaningful.
The average is
Yeah, and that
less
was-
meaningful over here. And what if we all
That's what
agree
I
to
was
that,
thinking.
right?
Yeah.
We all agree and go, wait, he's here, we don't need to focus on strand one as a whole. We only need to focus on this. This really needs to be worked on. Because
Right.
over here, it's
Because if-
amazing.
For goal setting, you kind of need that level of detail, I think.
And if I'm understanding correctly, we're using the cabinet evaluation, the superintendent evaluation, the community data to inform our filling out of this rubric, and then it will be 5 board members' scores that will be averaged.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if we just average it for each one,
Yes.
and then that way we're able to
Right,
pull
so-
out all these growth areas
then we-
and
so-
all these things that he doesn't have to worry about. He's like, I'm doing this, so why would
Right.
let me keep doing that and let me come over here and focus more time over here this year.
Right, so everyone will come in, or maybe submit online, as Don pointed out, since board self-assessment's online. Would complete this individually, the board president takes it, averages for each individual
Each
point,
individual, yeah, good.
and then we sit down and talk about the goals and professional development, and discuss the evidence before we arrive to this final summary.
Do they get after you get the average in here, so I'm just gonna go back to my own review.
Right.
So I do get an average within,
Mm-hmm.
and that's my growth area,
Right.
but then I do get an average as the whole, but it's not as meaningful.
Well, and that's why I don't
As
have, I
it
don't have
does-
the whole, do we want to do the whole?
So I do get an average, so I have something, that where I go,
I feel like the average as a whole is going to give us any useful.
or per strand, do we wanna do that, or do you just wanna keep it within the box?
Yeah, I think the averaging to a whole is sort of mirroring the teacher and the principal evaluation where, within all the criterion areas, and you still have to land on a score. The way theirs is done though is that you add up all the scores from all the criterion areas, and then whatever range that falls in, they end up in the 4, 3, 2, 1 range.
That's what mine is, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, no, it's
Yeah.
5.
So I think that's, I guess the question is how important is it
Final score.
that you get to
That one
a
number.
final score versus you have a score in each of the criterion areas that generate a conversation about
Yeah.
both district
Yes,
performance.
yeah, I was all
Performance is
focusing on, I'm
important.
trying to pull pull out the areas for growth.
Yeah, that's why I didn't know, I didn't know if you wanted to know Strand.
Renton,
Renton for process, WASDA for this. So this, I typed this up to match WASDA because they didn't even have a PDF I could print out for
Okay.
this.
but I heard you say, and I'm just clarifying because I didn't hear it again,
Right.
but it distracted me sufficiently where I looked at each of the questions, but you said they averaged this way and then
And
they
they
averaged
averaged down.
this way. These don't match.
No,
Well-
they average the average.
They average the
Oh,
averages.
That,
this.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Average the average.
Okay,
You
so
know,
it's like,
I
what do
don't
these
think
have
that's
in
a
common?
bad thing because it's kind of like, so,
Yeah, we're
so
gonna
I
have
like
soon.
the
We're
growth
gonna have-
area and that's our focus.
Okay.
But I don't know that it has much meaning, except for myself, I like to see that I'm making. I mean,
Don't you think that that's something that would be easy to do? I mean, if we looked at it when it's finished and we say, we think there's value in averaging
In
it,
May.
yeah, then we
I
just
just
average
should
it. That's super
know
fast, easy.
that
right?
took us a long time to figure that out
But I
last
think we
time.
have the process down. I don't think there's gonna be any confusion about how we're doing it,
It's
which is
called,
great.
it's called add then divide.
Yeah, so I think we can do that really fast and easy if that's what we wanna do, if we feel like that would be beneficial on the, when we finish with.
Just 'cause I think we-
Compiling of the
well,
data.
I think we could always make that change in May, that's true. Because I do want to make sure we have time to talk about the
Okay.
contract date.
Go ahead. We
Do we wanna
decided
change-
that we're
do we wanna-
averaging every one, which is
Everyone,
important. to get
right, and the
that.
summary will have an average for every box.
Yeah.
Based on the 5 submissions,
Okay.
okay? And so, and then if we go through it in May, we could always make a change and go across if once we get into the process, it might be easier to get a feel for that, perhaps.
Okay.
Okay. Are we ready to get back to talk about the dates? Because I think so. This looks like the remaining item to discuss. Do we want to